expecting my son in this life. I think that the really serious impression he's giving me. I need to sit down with him and see what they can work out. Just want to do it. Jessica Yellen, you have some new information? Go ahead.
Oh, Anderson, yes, the president has arrived here at McCormick Place. His motorcade has pulled up, and he should be appearing here any moment. You now know this before the crowd here does. So as soon as they emerge from what I'm told is the largest motorcade members of the White House press corps I've ever seen, because he is with an extended group of his family and close friends who are here to observe this historic night with him. When he emerges on that stage, this crowd is going to erupt in enormous cheers.
Do you have a sense, Jessica, how long before he starts speaking?
No, we don't have any timing on that yet, but it won't be long now.
They will fight until 12:30?
It's also a re-election with no coattails. In the House of Representatives, the last I left, which was about half an hour ago, Republicans are actually a net up 2 in the House. That's a series of failures for Republicans to take advantage of them for multiple Democrat-held seats. But the composition of the Senate is not going to change very much either. So the president is re-elected. We'll see what the margin is for 50% of the psychologically important. But we're still in the muddle. We're still in the muddle that we've been in all the last 2 years of Congress and the president. There's two where to go about one is that we disagreed really for we got murdered in the meeting where Obama did well. So that's something I think that is going to make it tough for us going forward. But in the Senate, you see a strengthening of liberal voices in the Senate. You see Elizabeth Warren coming in. It's a yes. Fair enough. But if you look at Elizabeth Warren coming in, Tammy coming in, you've got a strengthening of the liberals in the Senate. So
necessarily help the president.
They would never cut Medicare, never cut Social Security. So their fiscal cliff issues.
We had a real chance. We had a very good chance to retake the Senate. The truth is that the Democrats had dumb luck. They got lucky, and we had candidates that said dumb. You had bad candidates. You had some Tea Party candidates there. Keep saying this. If it weren't for the Tea Party, Republicans might have had control of the Senate, and it cost you 5 or 6 candidates since 2010. But on the fiscal cliff, my guess is that it's a very large can that gets kicked down the road in the short term with maybe some kind of a framework. You can't do a big deal.
Short-term extension. He said that he won't sign it. Or to do it ahead. Nothing else. It stands for a very radical anti-government agenda. It was rejected even in conservative states tonight. The president, I think his best act was one of his concluding answers. The second act, looked right to camera and finally, he said, here's my economic agenda. And on the screen it says, higher taxes for upper-income Americans. He ran on that. I can tell you from a lot of polling, 2/3 of the American people want those Bush tax cuts to expire for the upper end. So, by the way, did you get a shout-out from Sarah Palin tonight? I'm happy to say our super PAC I advised ran all these bank capital ads, and the former governor of Alaska, thank you for mentioning it, went on the air and said those ads inundated the people in Ohio and turned the race. And I do want to thank Governor Palin.
I thought you were going to say it first, and then I heard the best ads of this campaign were the priorities ads.
Even I'm not that arrogant. The president's ad is the best. We're told we're from our house. We're told President Obama's probably about a minute away from speaking, so again, you do not want to turn away from your screen at this point. A historic moment as the president goes on that stage. We're going to listen to the crowd, obviously, as he goes. These guys over there, some of them have served 3 consecutive two-term presidents. Bill Clinton tried to deal with some of these issues, divided government, got welfare to balanced budget. At the end of his second term, the Lord kept him from doing Medicare and Social Security. George W. Bush tried with the previous 3 proposals. He tried, couldn't get it done. Barack Obama in the first term had the one attempt with Speaker Boehner and Grand Compromise, didn't get it done. These problems, Gloria mentioned the Kent, when it comes to Medicare and Social Security, the fundamental big budget questions get kicked down the road now. Now we're going into the second term of the
question I want to ask you. Are the Democrats willing to compromise? If the Republicans will compromise on taxes, will they make those changes on Medicare? Will they?
But that's the question. And Van is saying the liberal base of the party is going to say to the president, President, you can't do this to us. We just got you elected, by the way.
You're going to fight.
The good news is he doesn't have to get reelected.
Wait, I'm sorry, let the president's about to come out. Let's watch.
More than 200 years after a former colony won the right to determine its own destiny, the task of perfecting our union moves forward. It moves forward because of you. It moves forward because you reaffirmed the spirit that has triumphed over war and depression, the spirit that has lifted this country from the depths of despair to the great heights of hope, the belief that while each of us will pursue our own individual dreams, we are an American family and we rise or fall together as one nation and as one people. Tonight, in this election, you, the American people, reminded us that while our road has been hard, while our journey has been long, we have picked ourselves up. We have fought our way back. And we know in our hearts that for the United States of America, the best is yet to come. I want to thank every American who participated in this election. Whether you voted for the very first time, or waited in line for a very long time. By the way, we have to fix that. Whether you pounded the pavement or picked up the phone, whether you held an Obama sign or a Romney sign, you made your voice heard, and you made a difference. I just spoke with Governor Romney, and I congratulated him and Paul Ryan on a hard-fought campaign. We may have battled fiercely, but it's only because we love this country deeply, and we care so strongly about its future. From George to Lenore to their son Mitt, the Romney family has chosen to give back to America through public service. And that is a legacy that we honor and applaud tonight. In the weeks ahead, I also look forward to sitting down with Governor Romney to talk about where we can work together to move this country forward. I want to thank my friend and partner of the last 4 years, America's happy warrior, the best vice president anybody could ever hope for, Joe Biden. And I wouldn't be the man I am today without the woman who agreed to marry me 20 years ago. Let me say this publicly, Michelle, I have never loved you more. I have never been prouder to watch the rest of America fall in love with you too, as our nation's first lady. Sasha and Malia, before our very eyes, you're growing up to become two strong, smart, beautiful young women, just like your mom. And I'm so proud of you guys. But I will say that for now, one dog's probably enough. To the best campaign team and volunteers in the history of politics, the best ever. Some of you were new this time around, and some of you have been at my side since the very beginning. But all of you are family. No matter what you do or where you go from here, you will carry the memory of the history we made together. And you will have the lifelong appreciation of a grateful president. Thank you for believing all the way, through every hill, through every valley. You lifted me up the whole way, and I will always be grateful for everything that you've done and all the incredible work that you put in. I know that political campaigns can sometimes seem small, even silly. And that provides plenty of fodder for the cynics who tell us that politics is nothing more than a contest of egos, or the domain of special interests. But if you ever get the chance to talk to folks who turned out at our rallies and crowded along a rope line in a high school gym, working late at a campaign office in some tiny county far away from home, he'll discover something else. You'll hear the determination and the voice of a young field organizer who's working his way through college and wants to make sure every child has that same opportunity. You'll hear the pride and the voice of a volunteer who's going door to door because her brother was finally hired when the local auto plant added another shift. You'll hear the deep patriotism in the voice of a military spouse who's working the phones late at night to make sure that no one who fights for this country ever has to fight for a job or a roof over their head when they come home. That's why we do this. That's what politics can be. That's why elections matter. It's not small, it's big. It's important. Democracy in a nation of 300 million can be noisy and messy and complicated. We have our own opinions. Each of us has deeply held beliefs. And when we go through tough times, when we make big decisions as a country, it necessarily stirs passions, stirs up controversy. That won't change after tonight. And it shouldn't. These arguments we have are a mark of our liberty. And we can never forget that as we speak, people in distant nations are risking their lives right now just for a chance to argue about the issues that matter. A chance to cast their ballots like we did today. But despite all our differences, most of us share certain hopes for America's future. We want our kids to grow up in a country where they have access to the best schools and the best teachers. A country that lives up to its legacy as the global leader in technology and discovery and innovation, with all the good jobs and new businesses that follow. We want our children to live in America that isn't burdened by debt, that isn't weakened by inequality, that isn't threatened by the destructive power of a warming planet. We want to pass on a country that's safe and respected and admired around the world. A nation that is defended by the strongest military on earth and the best troops this world has ever known. But also a country that moves with confidence beyond this time of war to shape a peace that is built on the promise of freedom and dignity for every human being. We believe in a generous America, in a compassionate America, in a tolerant America, open to the dreams of an immigrant's daughter who studies in our schools and pledges to our flag. To the young boy on the south side of Chicago who sees a life beyond the nearest street corner. To the furniture worker's child in North Carolina who wants to become a doctor or a scientist, an engineer or an entrepreneur, a diplomat or even a president. That's the future we hope for. That's the vision we share. That's where we need to go. Forward. That's where we need to go. Now we will disagree, sometimes fiercely, about how to get there. As it has for more than 2 centuries, progress will come in fits and starts. It's not always a straight straight line. It's not always a smooth path. By itself, the recognition that we have common hopes and dreams won't end all the gridlock or solve all our problems or substitute for the painstaking work of building consensus and making the difficult compromises needed to move this country forward. But that common bond is where we must begin. Our economy is recovering. A decade of war is ending. A long campaign is now over. And whether I earn your vote or not, I have listened to you. I have learned from you. And you've made me a better president. With your stories and your struggles, I return to the White House more determined and more inspired than ever about the work there is to do and the future that lies ahead. Tonight, you voted for action, not politics as usual. You elected us to focus on your jobs, not ours. And in the coming weeks and months, I am looking forward to reaching out and working with leaders of both parties to meet the challenges we can only solve together. Reducing our deficit, reforming our tax code, fixing our immigration system, freeing ourselves from foreign oil. We've got more work to do. But that doesn't mean your work is done. The role of citizen in our democracy does not end with your vote. America's never been about what can be done for us. It's about what can be done by us together through the hard and frustrating but necessary work of self-government. That's the principle we were founded on. This country has more wealth than any nation. But that's not what makes us rich. We have the most powerful military in history, but that's not what makes us strong. Our university, our culture, are all the envy of the world, but that's not what keeps the world coming to our shores. What makes America exceptional are the bonds that hold together the most diverse nation on earth. The belief that our destiny is shared, that this country only works when we accept certain obligations to one another and the future generations, so that the freedom which so many Americans have fought for and died for comes with responsibilities as well as rights, and among those are love and charity and duty and patriotism. That's what makes America great. I am hopeful tonight because I've seen the spirit of work in America. I've seen it in the family business, whose owners would rather cut their own pay than lay off their neighbors. And in the workers who would rather cut back their hours than see a friend lose a job. I've seen it in the soldiers who re-enlist after losing a limb. And in those SEALs who charged up the stairs into darkness and danger because they knew there was a buddy behind them watching their back. I've seen it on the shores of New Jersey and New York, where leaders from every party and level of government have swept aside their differences to help a community rebuild from the wreckage of a terrible storm. And I saw just the other day, in Mentor, Ohio, where a father told the story of his 8-year-old daughter, whose long battle with leukemia nearly cost their family everything. Had it not been for health care reform passing just a few months before the insurance company was about to stop paying for the claim. I had an opportunity to not just talk to the father, but meet this incredible daughter of his. And when he spoke to the crowd, listening to that father's story, every parent in that room had tears in their eyes. Because we knew that little girl could be our own. And I know that every American wants her future to be just as bright. That's who we are. That's the country I'm so proud to lead as your president. And tonight, despite all the hardship we've been through, despite all the frustrations of Washington, I've never been more hopeful about our future. I have never been more hopeful about America. And I ask you to sustain that hope. I'm not talking about blind optimism, the kind of hope that just ignores the enormity of the tasks ahead or the roadblocks that stand in our path. I'm not talking about the wishful idealism that allows us to just sit on the sidelines or shirk from a fight. I have always believed that hope is that stubborn thing inside us that insists, despite all the evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us. So long as we have the courage to keep reaching, to keep working, to keep fighting. America, I believe we can build on the progress we've made and continue to fight for new jobs and new opportunity and new security for the middle class. I believe we can keep the promise of our founding. The idea that if you're willing to work hard, it doesn't matter who you are, or where you come from, or what you look like, or where you love. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white, or Hispanic, or Asian, or Native American, or young or old, or rich or poor, able, disabled, gay or straight. You can make it here in America if you're willing to try. I believe we can seize this future together because we are not as divided as our politics suggest. We're not as cynical as the pundits believe. We are greater than the sum of our individual ambitions, and we remain more than a collection of red state and blue state. We are and forever will be
Care of our own. He's a big supporter for the President of the United States. They're celebrating at Obama headquarters in Chicago over at McCormick Place. You can see the confetti, you can see the Bidens, you can see the Obamas, a lot of their close friends and family members. They are there on the stage celebrating this historic win, a second term for the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States. They are pretty happy. Perhaps earlier today there was a little tension, but they came through and they won. They won decisively in the Electoral College, and they're winning one right now in the popular vote as well. Nearly 1 million votes by my estimate. Right now, 800,000 votes in the popular vote. President 50%, Mitt Romney 49%. They're still counting votes across the country right now, but the president clearly has been reelected. And he promised to get down to business right away. He promised to work not only with Democrats, but with Republicans. We had a statement, by the way, just a little while ago from John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, and the Republicans will maintain their majority in the House of Representatives. Also said he wants to work, he wants to cooperate, he wants to get down to business, and pretty soon they're going to have a lot of business to do because they have pricing issues between now and the end of the year, the so-called fiscal cliff. So there's no shortage of work to do. They'll celebrate tonight, but before you know it, and as consumers, they're going to have to get down and deal with a lot of very, very sensitive issues. Yeah, certainly indeed. And really an extraordinary speech by President Obama, especially when compared to his acceptance speech 4 years ago. A much different tone. Hold it out. You were remarking on that. And also you were remarking on just what an extraordinary win this is for the president. It really is. And it looks like I think the president has told friends that he thinks the economy really is going to take off the next 4 years. And this was much more optimistic, exuberant, energetic. This was more like the Barack Obama that we were introduced to at that Boston convention in '04 than the very somber young president-elect we were first introduced to in Grant Park. I loved it. It was wonderful. But it's hard for me actually to put it into context. No one has, in the modern era, ever been reelected with an economy this soft or even close to this soft. It's really remarkable. He held off any primary challenge from his own party, job one for an incumbent president, and then he made the case in the most difficult environment you can imagine. I mean, the guy, I know Barack means blessed, and maybe he is, but in his first weeks in office, there was economic collapse. His last weeks before the election, there was a hurricane, and in between, he didn't have very many easy days.
Apparently the hurricane was a blessing.
The way he handled it was, had he handled it, frankly, like President Bush handled Katrina, he'd be ex-President Obama tonight. So he had to rise to the occasion, and he had to have a team in place that could do it. And I think both in his campaign and certainly in FEMA, he seems to have had that team. But the campaign staff, having been an old staffer, the real hacks, we understand this is an even bigger, more difficult, and more impressive win than 2008. Really? Yes. Just because there were so many obstacles.
Oh, that kind of so. Final 6 months of 2008, we lost 3.47 million jobs. Final month before this election, we gained 171,000 jobs. He purposely was somber in 2008, right? Because he said he could not walk out there and give this exuberant speech knowing full well the economic condition that we were in. He even signaled that to the First Lady. She walked over, she wanted to give him a high five. He said, no, not tonight. From that moment, that's why he walked up there and he said, remember, he said, we have to rebuild this country break by break, house by house, street by street. And so he understood the grind. The last 4 years, it was a grind. And so what you saw tonight was them putting that coalition back together. You saw them expanding out west, winning those critical states. Folks say, okay, Nevada, New Mexico, you throw in Colorado. I mean, so you're talking about a different sort of focus this time around.
David?
I think that Paul and Roland, the Democrats, especially the president and his team, deserve a night of big celebration. This was a big victory. For an African American, we're black, to win 2 straight elections in this country is a significant accomplishment in political history, and I don't take anything away from that. I do think it's possible to overinterpret just how big the win is. I mean, it is worth remembering that when he beat John McCain, he beat by 10 million votes. And tonight he's winning currently by about 1 million votes. I think it'll go higher. But it's not, I don't think it was as overwhelming a victory as what he got last time when he broke through. What I also found interesting about the speech, and I think that it gave him some, it was a little tempered tonight about where he was going. It was much more a speech about values. Paul was absolutely right. This speech echoed 2004, the convention speech. It sounded like a redux, right? But what it didn't, what I've always carefully steered away from was something he has been arguing earlier, and that was that this election was going to clear the air. This election would resolve what path we were going to take. And instead he came out and talked about tonight that the arguments go on. People are going to, passions continue. And we need to see if we can figure out how to get there. He didn't seem to say, I've been elected, now I've got an agenda, this is what it's going to be.
I'd just like to make an observation about one throwaway line in the speech where he said, and all the people who waited online for 3 and 4 hours to vote, and we've got to fix that. You're damn right we do. What a disgrace. What a disgrace in this country that you have to wait online for 3 or 4 hours in order simply to vote.
Paul, you were making the case that you worked on elections in Brazil, which is obviously a very modern country, has a lot going for it, but they're
much better system of voting. Much better. They're electronic, it's instantaneous, and it is verifiable, so there are careful checks against corruption. A lot of people in America...
It's mandatory.
Right.
I want to just kind of quickly check in with Candy Crowley and just yell at Candy, you first, from your perspective.
Well, I actually was thinking about that 2004 speech that he made when he gave the speech. I also, talking back and forth to colleagues, said, the thing is you want to say, okay, what's the plan? And I think we still don't know what the plan is. And what we do know is that we've had the president tonight saying, I'm going to reach out, Republicans and Democrats. We have the speaker, who may or may not even expand his majority in the House, say, I'm willing to work with the president. But then both men have said, Speaker Boehner said in his statement tonight, this should not be seen as some mandate to raise taxes. And we know also that the president has said that he'd veto any bill that didn't end the tax cuts for the wealthy. So I'm not sure where we are. I don't know what the plan is. Tonight's not the night for it, but it's going to come pretty quickly, Anderson.
Jessica, let's check in with you, the campaign.
Well, Anderson, I think one of the things we're overlooking is that the president is very clear about when he says something, he actually does do it. And what he has said during this campaign, or he tries to do it, is that he believes his mistake in the first term was trying to reach out to Congress without reaching out to the American people more. And what he said in that speech was, I return more determined and more inspired than ever. What we saw during this campaign was the president who became increasingly cold and detached in office, became energized and alive on the campaign trails, and it breathed new life into him being on the campaign trail. And what his advisors tell me over and over is that when he gets back into office, if they thought he would be reelected, when he gets back into office, instead of working just with Congress, he will take the show on the road. I know people say it can't be done, whatever. They think it can be done, and that he will continue to make the case to the American people. He thinks that's the answer, and that will energize Congress to move. and that he did lay out a second-term agenda, they think pretty clearly.
Okay.
We disagree, but
We want to talk about that with our panelists.